Hey there, welcome to Synth Seeker. My name is Luke. Today we are going to talk about how to decide if your synth is a winner. Okay? Let's get started. In the synthesizer community, especially online, I've noticed a tendency towards a particular behavior, a sort of hooting and hollering dance that we sort of all do around what makes a synthesizer a winner. We'll talk about what that means. All right. I think that's normal. It's a normal sort of thing to view our need to assign value to the items we purchase. It's this sort of cautious weighing that we do of the options associated with our tools and our toys. And we evaluate our options, and we also weigh in the opinions of our community as we try to decide which item will provide us with the most utility, or the most fun, or a bit of both. We assign value to the choices, and then we pick the one that seems the most valuable to us. It's a blending of objective and subjective views, and the feeling, as well as feelings and fiscal measures, right? Parenthetically, if you can make the purchase without your spouse knowing about it, right? Or getting riled up. We got to face the realities. There are many things in our lives where the value is disputed in the community within which it lies, right? Computer stuff, car stuff, entertainment, musical instruments, be they acoustic or electronic. Lately, I've been kind of flummoxed by statements that synth A will beat synth B, all right? But we seldom say what makes a given synth the winner. We just argue over which one wins. And there sure is a lot of heated debate, right? I myself, just this week, intentionally tossed a hand grenade into the Synth Samurai call-in show, saying that all one needs to do to win in a contest against any Moog polysynth is to play in tune. I meant that in order to beat the Moog, just play any other polysynth and stay in tune, and you win. Okay. Now that statement had the desired effect. It was intended to, rile folks up, for fun. Let's face it, it's Synth Samurai, right? It's all about the WWE. And there were some flames, which may or may not have been sincere, but the entertainment value was activated. All right. And I said it in fun, but I also believe that statement. All right. Moog polysynths often have tuning problems. All right. How do I know? Well, I currently own or have owned every synthesizer made by Moog, save the most recent, the Muse. And in the case of the Muse, I've listened to enough out-of-tune amateur demos to know that the tradition over at Moog still holds true. All right. Now, that's not saying it's bad, all right? But I'm saying there are tuning discrepancies on Moog synths, right? I know this to be true empirically because I own them, all right? Do I own a Muse? No. But I've chosen not to purchase a Muse because of my experience with previous Moog polysynths and by listening to the demos of the Moog, the Moog Muse, or the Moog Muse, depending on what part of the pond you lie on. But that doesn't mean that the Muse is a loser. It just means that it's an analog synth. But its attributes of thermal drift and sometimes imperfect factory calibration, and the fact that some people actively seek that out-of-tune sound, mean that there will never be a shortage of places where I can pedantically tweak the noses of Moog owners, but I can also get away with it because I am one of them. All right? So I think Moogs, in general, are awesome synths, and I may still buy a Muse. But my personal OCD around tuning currently prevents me from doing so. But that's the Muse. And this video is ostensibly about what makes a synth a winner. Well, by the criteria I'll be sharing in just a moment, the Muse may yet be called a winner. We'll see. So, after a great deal of thought, great deal being relative, consulting friends, and trying to come up with a sort of personal measure for what makes a synth a winner, this is what I've decided. So go dip your cursors in acid for any responses you'd care to share. And to be clear, this is what is needed to be a winning synth. Okay, I am putting forth a proposal that says this is what makes a synth a winner. All right. Falling short of this metric doesn't necessarily mean that the synth under evaluation is a loser. I'm not saying it's a bad synth. There's a philosophical question in there on value. And there's also this other question of, if you've got a pack of 10 finalists, first place obviously wins, but does second place lose? What about fifth or 10th, right? Participation trophies may be a thing for synthesizers across the board, as well as our children. All right. So here we go. The following thing that makes a synth a winner is, drumroll, the panel. Specifically, 3 aspects of the panel. All right. The panel needs to have a good build quality. Okay. I don't care what kind of synth you are, who you made, how old you are, vintage, new, whatever. If stuff falls off your panel, if your panel is easily broken, if the knobs pop off, if your sliders lose their little fob on the end, yeah, that's bad. Okay. You lose at that point. So your panel has to have good build quality. All right. Secondly, more important, the panel has to offer enough control to allow you to easily reach most, if not all, of the synth's potential timbral area. Okay? What do I mean by that? Well, every synth has a timbral area. It's like, what is the map of everything of every sound the synth can make? Some synths have a very small map. They only do a few sounds. The Moog Minotaur, right, is an example of a relatively small map of timbres, right? The minimoog, same way, right? But something like the Hydrosynth has a very, very large map, a lot of surface area on its timbral map, okay? So what makes a synth a winner is a panel of high build quality, but also a panel with enough controls on it that allows you to easily reach and control and navigate that timbral map. And you have to be able to do it easily, all right? And thirdly, that panel has to be easy to learn and easy to remember, okay? If you have to keep pulling up the manual, that may be a you problem, but generally, if it doesn't use metaphors and gestures that make sense and stick, it may not be it may not be a winner, okay? I'm not saying it's a loser, but winners, synths that are winners, good panel build quality. The panel makes it easy to cover the map of sound, and it's easy to learn and easy to remember. And that's it. That's what makes a synth a winner. All right. Now you may ask, well, what about the sound? And what about the oscillators and the filters? And I like sequencers and ARPs and layers and binaural and poly after such, whatever. Those are like add-ons, right? I guarantee you, if the panel's crap and you can't figure it out and you can't remember it, and you can't actually use it to quickly reach all of the timbral places on the map, that synth is going to fade in your studio. You're going to use it less. It's going to get replaced by other things. That's my assertion. Now we can argue it, right? But that's the rule I live by, and it's working for me. And I would assert, with at least amongst my friends, I would assert that is something I have seen. I've empirically seen this happen to, more than my closest friends. So that's it. That's the giant revelation. You can hang up and close the video in a huff now, right? What makes a synth a winner is the panel. Okay. Everything else is just extra. Because let's face it, the way synth technology is moving forward, and be you an analog person or a digital person, I'm telling you right now, within the next few years, everything's going to go digital. Everything you're going to see. There will be holdouts in the analog space. There will be boutique analog things. But the modeling is getting so good, and what's on the horizon, right? It's gonna be all about the panel. You have so much control. You're gonna have so many options that if the panel sucks, the synth is only a winner if the panel allows you to get to all the places on that map. That's my prediction. We'll see if it comes true. Now, what are some examples of synths that I personally judge to be winners? Minimoog, right off the bat. And it doesn't have to be a Moog minimoog. You can get a Roland SEO2. You can go pick up a Behringer, right? That panel design allows you to easily get to everything on the timbral map for minimoog, which arguably is small, right? But it's easy to use, easy to learn, easy to remember, and eventually it just becomes muscle memory. All right. What's another one? Well, pulling from the synths that I have personally laid hands on, all right, because I'm not going to be able to say, PB12. I've never laid hands on one. Can't say anything about it, Super Gemini. It looks good. It's on the list, but I don't own one yet. So I can't say that. You will have to make that judgment call. You tell me. You've got a Super Gemini, and you're like, the panel on it is pristine. Let me know. But of the things I know, Nord Lead A1. Fantastic panel. Super easy to use, super easy to navigate. Everything is in plain sight. There are shift functions, so there's a shift button. So knobs have a label on the top that says what it's for and a label on the bottom that's its shift function. Easy to do. All right. I'm old with bad eyes, and I can read that thing without having to bend over and look at it. Right. Good panel. Covers the entire map of timbre. If you want to go expensive, Groove Synthesis third wave. All right, very good panel. No shift functions, but you can cover most of the timbral map without having to drill into any of its submenus, and most of its context menus come up automatically. So you really don't even have to shift into things or dive through a menu. And then lastly, this may inflame some people, but I really like the Korg multi-poly panel. Now, I've only been using it a month, but again, like the Nord Lead A1, it reminds me of a Nord Lead A1. It's basically everything's labeled. It's more or less one knob per function with shift functions, right? Yes, there's a screen. Yes, there are pages in the menu, but most of the stuff is stuff you can access contextually through tapping buttons and turning knobs. So I think that one's a winner as well. All right. Now, besides having a failing panel, right? So if its panel fails, it's not a winner. Sorry. I'm sticking to that story. If a synth has a failing panel, or let's say it's got a winning panel, it could still fail. All right. It could still become a non-winner because there are two other rules that a synth can sort of break that I think are knockouts. All right. The first is if the synthesizer's behavior is not stable or it's unpredictable. All right. So if you've got a software-based synth, if it's buggy, it can't be a winner. Doesn't matter how good its panel is, right? Because the panel can lie to you. You touch panel, it's like that turns on the ARP, but it's buggy and the ARP dies or stops working, right? And my example for that is like the Moog Matriarch. I love the panel on the Matriarch, right? But it's got a bug with its ARP, and its ARP just stops functioning intermittently. And this is a known issue, right? And some people have had it repaired, and some people have sent it in for repair, and they couldn't get it fixed. It's like operates as designed, right? So that's a problem. Another one would be early firmware versions of the Hydrasynth. I bought a Hydrasynth on day one, and it was buggy as hell, right? I ended up selling it because it was unpredictable and unreliable. I got rid of it. I own one again now, and it's fine, right? And it is also an excellent panel. But I have other issues with the Hydrasynth, which prevent me from saying it's a winner. I know it's definitely a winner for some people, but for me, nah. And then a synth, the second thing that can knock you out of the winner circle is if a synth, basically, a synth cannot present any sort of non-trivial audio signal issues, all right? And this is stuff like if you've got a USB powered synth that gives you a ton of USB noise, I'm sorry that you can't win then. It doesn't matter how good the panel is. If the noise floor on the synth is incredibly high, right? One of my cohorts, I think it was the Behringer Spice he was talking about. I think it was the Spice. One of the Behringer Dune-oriented synths, right? The noise floor on it is prohibitively high. Now that may be his unit, but he's not pleased. But that's definitely a knockout for him in that case. And really, that's about it. So, what makes a synth a winner? Good panel. All right, 3 things about the good panel. Got to be good build quality, right? Got to offer enough controls to allow you to cover the entire map of timbre, all right, or the large majority of it. And it's got to be an easy to learn and easy to remember panel, all right? That's what makes a synth a winner, because you will use that synth. You will learn it deep magic on that panel. You will ingrain that, all right? Sorry, Narnia reference. And really, that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to throw this out there. We were having this brouhaha over like which synth would win. Which synth wins, a Prophet 10 or an OBX-A? It's like, I don't know. Which one has the better panel? That's really what it comes down to, as far as I'm concerned. All right, and that's about it. All right, so hey, thanks. If you don't give a damn, glad you got this far. If you do care, put your thoughts and opinions in the comments, if you feel like it. I stream on Sundays at 2 p.m. US Eastern. You can jump in there and yell at me if you want. All right? That's about it. Thanks very much. I'll talk to you later.